Hi, my name is John. In the course of my work as a residential consulting arborist, we do a considerable amount of work preserving and enhancing views for uphill homeowners. That might include a view to a city skyline or mountains or the opposite shoreline of a lake, or territorial views, or a combination of these. I've been asked many times, how much will view-related tree work improve home values? In this video, we'll be unpacking the topic of home value increases related to improved views. We are joined today by Stephan Macdonald. Stephan has over 25 years of experience in real estate in both residential and investment properties. He's also worked in a sales management capacity, overseeing over $1 billion in annual real estate sales in the Puget Sound. Through these experiences, he has established himself as a trusted advisor in real estate. Thank you for joining us today, Stephan.
Hey, John. Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to being here.
So unpacking costs and trees and views and benefits versus cost, I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
So first of all, great question. It's a kind of a really fun topic to talk about money and trees and real estate, right? So I think bigger picture, what's the cost of things and what's the value? So it's a very subjective conversation. And a good example, I think, for me, is if we have a piece of real estate that has a big concrete circle on it, right? Mm-hmm. And we put an H on it, it goes from a concrete circle in the backyard to a helicopter pad. So all of a sudden we have a helicopter pad in our property and the value is really high. So I think what we're looking at today is how can we create that value, in a property, right? Yeah. So the first thing is when somebody walks out on a back deck, for example, and they want to buy a property, the first thing is there really is an emotion there. And we know that we've bought homes and we look at the emotion of real estate. So the conversation is, what is that emotion? And how can we enhance that, right? So the first thing I think is there sky, is there a view behind the trees, right? And if there is there, what I've seen is beautiful views that over time really come encumbered by the actual tree themselves. You have a beautiful tree and you have a beautiful view. So what's the difference? What's that dichotomy between the two?
Right. So what you're saying, Stephan, is there's a connection between cost and value.
Right, exactly. So I think the way I would illustrate that is if we have, a car, right? Say the car's $10,000. So if we have a car and I want to sell it, how can I make that car look its best, right? So if I take the car, $10,000, and we get it detailed for $200, can we create a $10,000 car, $200 to detail it, create it into a $11,000 property or car, right? So what I'm saying is with trees, I think what I've seen over my years is we have a nice property, we spend a little bit of money on it, and we enhance the value. So not only do we get a better price for the property, but better conditions. So you're creating an emotion and creating the value just with a little bit of extra money.
Right. Now, on that topic of the subjective nature of trees, and even I've had homeowners actually make the comment that it's speculative. Right. But a lot of that, from my experience, that comment is coming out of their lack of, they don't have experience in seeing this. So, I mean, if I were to say, well, it's speculative to do staging on a house, what would be your response to that?
Yeah, so the idea is like, date night. You go out for a night, you want to look nice for your wife, husband, and dress up. You want to look your best. So when you're selling your home, how can we make that home look its best? So the cool thing is when you walk out, say in a backyard or a deck overlooking a lake, right? So the question is, if there was no lake or no view, or there is a view, what's the difference between the cost, right? And it's very hard to be that subjective. But the cool thing is this, John, what we do know is, if there's no view, right, the house is worth this much. If there is a view, we know it's higher. Okay. Right? So we do know there's a delta there in value, specifically between the view and no view. So I would say if I did all my values, and again, a very crude number, it probably range between 10 to 15%. So if I have a nice view, behind trees, you pull the trees away, you see some lake behind it, you're at least, from what I can see, on Mercer Island, for example, we're talking about increase the value maybe 10, 15%.
In working with you in the past, you've actually done some analysis of these, actually specifically on Mercer Island. And I remember years ago, you actually, I mean, there's pretty significant deltas between properties with views, no views, or partial views. I mean, is that something that you can unpack a little bit further?
Well, it's very hard to be that general. But the crude numbers, if I was going to give a crude number, what I look at in Mercer Island, you might have a cost per square foot for no view. Then there's a partial view, and I've seen ranging, 5-7% partial view, and then I've seen views up to 15%, and that goes all the way up, obviously, beautiful west-facing, beautiful views. So a general number, I would say specifically about maybe 15% would be a crude number, is increasing in value.
I said earlier that somebody that has less experience in this space might look at it as, well, that's a high-risk endeavor to make an investment in the view. And when we were talking this last week, you brought up staging. I mean, that's a pretty predictable thing, is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember the numbers on
Yeah, so to be specific, so what I'm looking at, if you look at in the house, it's worth, say, $1 million. So there's national averages through the National Association of Real Estate that range from 4 to 6%. So if you have a house worth $1 million, you spend $4,000, $5,000 on staging, making it a little nicer, you will typically get $60,000 back. $5,000 in, $60,000 back on a $1 million home. So the question is it speculative or is it really a fact? I know for a fact, I think we all do know, is if we look at a property and you see this emotion and it looks nice, people can, it's making it easier for people to envision themselves in that house, right? They will buy it. They will buy it flat out. So right now, I think the market is definitely very strong. So most things will sell. But I believe there's a thing called lazy real estate agents and really energetic ones. And I think what we got to do is make it its best self so you get the most amount of money and the best conditions as a seller.
That's good. Your experience in that space, in views, as well as your experience in staging, you'd kind of go, yeah, this is a good thing to actually, make an investment as far as a high ROI, from that point of view. So it becomes less speculative because of your experience.
Right. Well, I think the role you're playing really is, I know you do, I've seen you do the same thing, John. You're a trusted advisor. We know what we can do with trees. We know what we can do to make the house look its best self. And what's the math in there? So if I have a house worth $1.5 million and I want to say, if I spend $30,000, can I get $150,000 back? We can't guarantee that. But as a trusted advisor who's walked this journey for 25 years, I'd be pretty confident, but it'd have to be very specific per property.
Sure.
Is it north? Is it south, east, west? What I'm seeing is there's less and less view properties. And the population is growing. So for us, I think we have to preserve these views, take the beauty of the trees, and bring that out and showcase what you have.
Right. Now that's a tip of an iceberg, that comment you just made there. There's less and less view properties. Can you unpack that? What do you think the contributing factors of that are?
Washington State, houses, trees are growing. But what's happening if you look at waterfront properties right now, what I'm seeing is a lot, for example, if you take Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, they both own 10 acres of land, right? So if they bought all the houses around about where they live, so there's less and less trophy properties on the west-facing properties, right? So there's less of this waterfront properties available because the neighbours are buying neighbours' properties. And these properties will actually stay in families for generations. So what I'm seeing is with the natural trees growing, with people acquiring more properties, I see less and less of the options available. So I think we have to be more creative and lean into how can we garden and enhance what we have.
And my commentary on that would be the restrictive ordinances. About 3 years ago, Medina passed an ordinance where all trees over 6 inches in diameter are regulated. Mercer Island, 2017, all trees over 10 inches in diameter are regulated. So essentially what happens is you get more and more pushback from municipalities on removing some of these large trees. And there's some geotechnical things to consider on trees on slopes, but through trimming, skilled trimming processes, we can open up the views pretty dramatically. And we've had some experiences working together on some properties that have been pretty substantial. Can you unpack some of that as far as specific properties or scenarios that you've actually done research or had some experiences in the space of views, trees, costs and benefits and return on investment?
So I think the first thing I always approach is, are you living in the home? Are you dealing with the trees to live in it? Or are you trimming your trees to sell it? Right? So people want to see what they're buying. I think that's what I've seen over the years. So if we have some trees, we want to shade the house, live in it, and we love trees, right? But if you're selling a home, there's certain things you want to do. And what I've found is the number one thing is obviously showcase your view, right? Number two, you want to create as much light in the property as possible. People don't seem to like to walk into a dark atmosphere, right? So the idea is how can we create a sharp feeling? So for example, if a kid comes in and his hair's really scruffy, you'll think that kid's not really maintained well, right? If he cuts around his ears, right, they think, oh, well, that maybe designer. So the idea is we want to create an atmosphere where people feel this property's been maintained, it's very specific, it's sharp, and people relax in that and they're more comfortable buying a property that's been maintained. They're not buying a money pit, they're buying something that's been created and is part of a strategy. So one of the things that I think is really, really important is as trusted advisors, like you and I, we're working in this space, but we have to say, as a trusted advisor, what's the macro strategy to what we're trying to accomplish here? right? So all the money, like staging, prepping trees, getting your home ready, is all part of a strategy to enhance your property to sell at its highest value in the shortest amount of time. So one of the things, John, that comes to mind when we talk about cost and value, there's a process. There's a process to creating what we're trying to accomplish. And one of the things I think you did a really good job of, the property I was involved with, was we had a situation where a home was overlooking the lake, but there's a lot of homes between the house, the subject property, and the lake. So unpack how that worked. How do you get that, the views, the trees, how do I get that to work physically? What's the process?
So we actually did a video specifically on the strategies oriented around that,
Right.
and another video on Maitri University Space,
Yeah.
which that property was kind of a showcase of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And what we did is we did work right up to a property line of somebody that didn't want to cooperate, was kind of like, I don't want to talk to you about trees.
Right.
And then we then actually worked collaboratively with each of, I think it was 3 or 4 other property owners.
Right.
So the homeowner that didn't want to actually participate with us, I went to him and said, we're doing work on trees with branches in your airspace over all your property lines. Are you sure you don't want to meet with me? So we end up then meeting with him, laid out a set of benefits of how we can actually do some things, make the trees healthier and safer. And we actually, he gave us, permission to proceed.
Right.
We ended up improving the view from probably 80% of the rooms of that house. It was a pretty extensive project. If I remember, it was like a $35,000 investment to be able to do it. And it was at your council that actually, you suggested your client to proceed forward.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, it was some positive results had come out of that. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, it's amazing. No, I would say it enhanced the property value by a lot. So what you're saying is, John, is the process is you have to really contact all the neighbours and create a value there for all the neighbours and create a value for the seller. Right. And one of the things I thought was important when we talk about cost and value is there a seasonality component to that?
Yes, regarding what happens on the views that have deciduous trees where they lose the leaves, there is a benefit to be able to actually look at that when the leaves are off of the trees.
Right.
That particular project, we didn't have that benefit. We had to kind of work through it. So it's a little bit like landing a plane in the fog.
Right.
But it's something where there are some benefits, depending upon the depth of the view corridors and the number of trees that you have between the water and the subject property and the water. So each scenario is different based on the topography and other factors. But in conversations we've had, you've actually brought up kind of the lull that happens in properties going on the market in the winter and kind of teeing up for the spring.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's like in the winter months there's some benefits to actually looking at views, values, properties because of the impact of the deciduous trees on the views.
So cost-wise, I would say to kind of wrap this, put a bow on it, there is a cost. I think if you have a property worth say $1.5 million, I've seen as an average at least 10%, 15%. If you spend $30,000 or $30,000 on a property on trees, if it's needed, you'll enhance the property. I've seen a north of $150,000 value difference. It's hard to be that specific because it's subject. Every property is different, but there is a cost and there is an increase in value to that. There's timing to it. There's a strategy to it. And I think the whole trusted advisor conversation, being very specific to the strategy of the seller and the market, and obviously with trees is really the answer to that.
Right. Now, do you remember how many square feet that particular property we did work on, or ish?
Probably about 4,500 square feet.
Okay, so it's 4,500-ish square feet. Yeah, because I remember before we did that project, you had actually talked about some pretty significant improvements in the dollar per square foot return on investment.
Right.
And the client had actually sent me a letter that said that he thought that the $35,000 he spent added $250,000 to the value of that house. But from a dollar per square feet point of view, when you take the 250 grand and divide by 5,000 square feet or so, I mean it pencils out to it's probably about $50 ish a square foot, $50-$60 a square foot, which That's relatively in tune with what you would see on Mercer Island as far as the difference between a minor view to a partial view to open view, like some of the swings that actually occur in that space.
No, that's really, so the only way I'm always cautious in that space is a cost value conversation. Typically, if a house is worth, say, $1 million, I would think the value of the land maybe 35-40%. So your dirt value is 40%, and the house itself is worth 60%. Then you throw in a view or waterfront, and that skews it. Your land value increases, right, and your house value is less. And so for me, it's a little skewed, so it's a little harder, more complicated. But what I've seen is at least probably a 10 to 15% value on the cost per square foot.
Right. So it's customized, and essentially that's where getting some experienced counselors on looking at maybe a specific view or specific project or what's possible, what's not possible is a little bit, there's a subjectivity to it, but there's definitely some statistics that would back up that it's beyond just like a speculative, this is just pie in the sky conversation. There's statistics, data, transactions that back up basically it being a high ROI item.
So one of the fun things I like, John, is being in real estate for 25 years, is that you can create, without taking the trees out, you can create light. You can create a view. You can elevate the value of your property by even just trimming back some trees. So we've seen that numerous times. One, for example, in a place called Houghton, Kirkland area, this house we couldn't sell this home. And I'm standing there going, how can we sell this house, right? And that was a little different in the market right now. And there's a tree there. It's actually an ugly tree. And we take the tree out. I would speak to the neighbour, like kind of what your special is. Spoke to the neighbour, paid some money, took the tree down, and we sold it within 3 days. So this is a house we couldn't literally sell, and the tree was actually reducing the value, and you can even sell it. It wasn't even a value thing. So I think to me is opening our eyes up to light and bright, and it's the energy around a house and the views with trees is a phenomenal, specifically in the Northwest. As you know, there's trees everywhere.
In talking about tree removals, a tree removal is a little bit of a specialized demolition project. The antithesis of that is artistic tree work. So can you have some commentary on that, of the spectrum and tree guys?
Well, for me, when I recommend tree work, it's like you go for a haircut. You can't uncut your hair or you can't redo it if it's a bad hair day. So to me, when you touch, is a bad example, do you know? So the idea
that's a terrible example.
So I'm saying my idea. But the idea is if you're messing or really leaning into creating art, that will take 20 to 30 years to restore if you make a mistake. My concern is once you say, this is what I want, how do we get what we want? We realize we want to create something special, right? But how do we get there? And what I've seen is, in my limited, you know more about this than me, John, but when you look at a tree and your person's up the tree trying to cut the tree down and trim it and create art with it, he can't really see what he's doing from the person at the house. So to me, having somebody who really does it right is a big deal.
Yeah, and obviously in your space, there's an irrevocable nature of somebody signing and notarizing their name and passing a property on to somebody else. And for me, the branch cut, the tree, that's my irrevocable space. So that's where having experience as a trusted advisor is really, really valuable. So how can people get in contact with you, Stephen?
So Stephan Macdonald, it's the Mcdonald Group. We would love to help you. We hope we're trusted advisors to many people, we are. And we're a small team, and we love trees, we love the whole idea of creating your best self through your real estate. And we've done that for many years. So Stephan Macdonald, the Macdonald Group, and we look forward to connecting with you.
If you found the video helpful, hit the like button. If you're looking for more information on how to care for your trees, subscribe to our channel.